It's Ches Menachem of Tavshin Ayin Daled, Monday. We are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tavshin Daled Tavshin Beis in the Mamar Shehikdimu Yom Beis the Shavuos Tavshin Beis on page Shin Vov. We're up to the beginning of the paragraph V'hadugma. The Rebbe explained the difference between Igulim and Yosher, Makif and Pnimi. Right? That the difference is that the Kav, which is the Yosher aspect of the Eir, passes through the Tzimtzum, it clothes itself in the Tzimtzum and it takes on the characteristics of the Tzimtzum, and therefore it comes, when it comes down, it changes. It's mehus, its being, its essence is changed from what it was as it descends into the various levels, and that's why it comes down in its chalkos, also in a manner of fragmentation, whereas the igulim aspect of the Ein Sof, which is related to the Ein Sof Shalifnei Tzimtzum, God's infinite light before the contraction, although it comes down via the Tzimtzum, through the Kav, nevertheless, it's b'derech ma'ivir, it's only in a passing through mode. It is carried by the Kav through the Tzimtzum into elements, into different spheres, and therefore its mehus, its essence doesn't change, and it also does not come in a manner of ischalkas of fragmentation. The Rebbe goes on to explain this further. He brings a parable. The parable for this, b'nivroim lamata, in creatures down here below, hu hachiluk shebein eretz lamayim, it's like the difference between land and water. Dihine ha'oretz yesh lo hischalkus. For the land has fragmentation. Right? We see it in the simple sense. It's obvious to the eye, the fragmentation that exists, the differences that exist on earth are obvious, the different elements that exist on earth. And the Rebbe brings from Avos the Rabnoson, ki the Isab Avos the Rabnoson, as is brought in Avos the Rabnoson, sheha'oretz yesh lo roish guf v'raglayim. In this particular section of the Avos Rabnoson, he goes through all the different aspects that there are, the comparable elements that we find in the world, and where we find those corresponding elements in a human. So he over there says that the earth has a head, a body, and legs. Just like the fragmentation that we find by the human being. Beginning from the head, where the general life force that exists in the head is divided into three parts, which are the three intellects known as what? The three aspects of intellect known as Chabad, Chochma, Bina, and Das. And these three aspects of the intellect, that clothe themselves in the three hollows of the brain, and each one of these three are divided one from another, they're separate one from another. In other words, each one of them is a distinct aspect and element, and obviously so.
How so?
Chochma, Bina, and Das.
Isn't he drawing an analogy to the physicality of the brain?
Yes, I don't.
So how's that?
I can't give you the exact anatomy, which aspect of.
Presumably, this guy does.
Yeah, must be. Who?
Rav
Nosson. No, Rav Nosson just says that you have Reish Guf and Aglayim. He goes through all the different things. He doesn't go into the different strands of Chochma, Bina, and Das.
Each one is manifest within one.
Yeah, we got to do correct. We got to do a little more research to figure out how which the temporal, what's it called, the temporal lobe, the frontal lobe, there's different sections to the brain. I think it's actually, there are 4 or there are 5. So that's noch gucken. I'm sure we can find
I post something on it.
Yeah, we got to find which meichin, which meyach, which physical section of the brain corresponds to the Chochma, Bina, and Das. But let's take it as read. Yes. So the three aspects of Chochma, Bina, and Das correspond to 3 parts of the brain. Chochma, Bina, to the 3 parts of the brain, to the 3 hollows of the brain. And from these 3 aspects of the intellect, mistafim are branched off. They branch off into They manifest themselves. Hagimel Choshim, the three senses of Re'iyah, Shmiya, V'dibur. Sight, hearing, and speech. Chush HaRe'iyah Mechachma, the sense of sight comes from Chachma, is offshoot from Chachma. Chush HaShmiya Mebina, the sense of hearing is an offshoot of Bina. Chush HaDibur Midas, and the sense of speech is an offshoot of Das. Kamesha Kosov, and he brings a pasuk to prove that Das is related to speech, because it says in the pasuk in Mishlei, Mipiv Das, from his mouth is wisdom, is knowledge. So in other words, we see that Das is what is related to the mouth, to speech. Of course, we all know that the Chassidus it says that what's Dibur? Malchus is Dibur. Right?
Right.
Okay, so I guess there are levels. There's manifest speech, and then there's the sense of speech. Let's hold that thought for a minute. All of this needs a little further looking into. But let's first go through the text. And it's because of this, that is why angels are referred to as animals, as beasts. Why? First of all, where do we see it? Because we see Arya, Shiur, right, in the Merkava, in the celestial throne. We talk about the different faces that we find in the Merkava, right? Ha'elyona, in the celestial throne. So there's Arya, Shiur, there's the lion, there's the ox, etc. Why? She'ein lohem das, because they have no knowledge. Which level of das are we talking about? Hainu, das elyon, the upper level of das. They only possess kim das tachtim bilvad. We'll get to that in a second. Ve'ein lem dibur, and they also can't speak, right? As we know, what's the difference between a physical human being and a physical animal? A human being can speak, an animal cannot. Same thing is beruchnius. We'll soon see what that means. That's why. That's also the meaning of the pasuk in Hosea. Achrei havaya yelchu, behind Hashem, following Hashem they go. Ke aryeh yishok, they roar like a lion. What is that a reference to? Who roars like a lion? So it says in Zohar that this is a reference to the Koyal Machal Michal. This is a reference to the camp of the angel Michael, Bechinas Pnei Arya Leimin, which is the idea of the aspect of in the celestial throne is the face of the lion, which is to the right. What's the point? They roar. They don't speak. Hainu she'ein le dibur. He cannot speak. He doesn't have dibur mamish k'meo odom shemedaber b'das. Doesn't have actual speech like a human who speaks with knowledge. Well, at least some humans. But rather, he roars like a lion without speech. Right? This idea of das elyon and das tachten, we learned, if you remember, in the Mamar Ve'ela Mishpatim. I believe it was in Tafshin Yud Aleph. Ve'ela Mishpatim. Over there, he spoke about the role of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah. He spoke the difference between the different neshamas that there are. There's neshamas that are called seed of man, and then there are neshamas that are called the seed of the animal. Remember, Zera Adam, Zera Behema. And over there, he spoke extensively about the idea of das and Moshe Rabbeinu's role in affecting neshamas with das, and so on and so forth. Right? And he said over there that the neshamas that are b'chinas Zera Behema, like the seed of the animal, of the beast, are neshamas de bria. Neshamas of bria, right? And he explained the idea of das elyon. He's not talking about das elyon. There's two types of das elyon. When you use the term das elyon and das tachten in Chassidus, there's das elyon and das tachten in terms of the perspective. Whether elikus is b'pshitus and elimus is b'schachus or vice versa. Or to use the terminology of Chassidus, l'mayla yesh or lamata ayin, or lamata ayin or l'mayla yesh. In other words, what's the perspective? Is the true yesh, godliness, and the ayin, nothingness, is down here below, or vice versa? And that's the perspective of das elyon, das tachten. We learned about that extensively as well. That's not what he's referring to over here. Over here he's actually referring to the sphira, or the koyach, this level known as das. So generally speaking, we know that there's chokhmah, bina, and das. Das follows chokhmah and bina. But there is a level of das that we learned that precedes chokhmah and bina. Remember, we learned about that. That's also related to the fact that sometimes when you in the minion of spheres, the counting of spheres, when you count keser, you don't count das. They're interchangeable. Keser is really das elyon. In this sense, it's das elyon, right? So that's what he's referring to. So malachim, it's all about perception of godliness. That's why malachim begin where in El Mabriya, not beyond, right? So generally, when he says over here that they have no das, he says over here that she'ein dibur mamish, right? They have perception and godliness, but they don't have this level of das elyon, the das that precedes the chachma bin. In other words, their perception and godliness is of a lower level, right? So so you have chachma bin and das, which corresponds to sight, hearing, and speech, right? The ear. When you say the ear, we know it says the ear means chachma. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go into Eretz Yisrael because Moshe Rabbeinu was at the level of the ear. Before he passed away, the Eibishter told him to go up to Har Nevoy, see the land. We also learned about that. He wanted to imbue Yidden with the level of the ear, with chachma. But when he saw that he's not going into Eretz Yisrael, what did he say? Shema Yisrael. Listen. That's already bina, right? The lower level of perception of godliness. So chachma bina das corresponds to the ear, shmiya, and dibur. Lower, when it goes a step down, these three aspects of chachma bina das, which in the first stage are correspond to the sense of sight, hearing, and speech. Lower, it corresponds to the food pipe, the windpipe, and the veins that come shebetzavar, that are in the neck, right? Which is the intermediary that connects the head to the body. And then when it comes down even lower into the body, again, this divides into the right hand, the left hand, and the body. And even lower, the right foot, the left foot, and the body. Right? So we see, what's the point? That in man, we have his chalkus, fragmentation. And it's obvious, at every level. Starting from the koiches nefesh, the actual faculties of the soul, corresponding to the various manifestations as they manifest themselves into the physical body.
And he's saying the fragmentation is into threes always, for some reason.
Yeah. Very good, because you remember the two ksarim and the third kesser, we'll get to that in a minute, right? So this is in the person. So too, referring back to the opposite of Nosen, the Rebbe doesn't explain the different strands and elements as he does in the human body, but because the earth has whatever the body has, therefore also in the earth you have all these detailed divisions and fragmentations that you have in the human being. This is not the case when we talk about water. There is no obvious fragmentation or division. Right? Another couple of lines. For although even in the waters we find the difference between the upper waters and the lower waters, right? As we learned, as it says in Bereshit in Genesis, that Hashem separated, He created the firmament, right? The Rakia, which divides the upper waters from the lower waters. So there is division, it would seem. Nevertheless, there might be a division, but they're both water. It's just that they're divided into two. But there's no obvious difference between one and the other. That's number one. So in the earth, there is division. In the water, there's no division. The Yisraelim is even more. Shegam abrim shemamayim. Shemechulakim zem betzalmam betchunasam v'tavnisam. Hareim shavim bazeh shemitziusam v'mitzias amayim. Shalachin kashapesh min amayim yad mesim. We'll go back to that tomorrow. Not only in the water is there no difference. In the creatures that you live in the water, there's far less division than there is in the creatures that live on earth. Continue Mitzvah tomorrow.